What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TOJ Talks. I'm your host, Will Parkinson, at WillPaw11 on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We just had an earthquake here in the New York area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Boston, wherever. Apparently, people felt it in Philly. That was wild. I thought I don't know what was going on, but happy to be joined. Second time, I think, on the pod,
Yep.
hosting Good Morning Football, 13 years in the league, if I'm not mistaken. Jason McCourty of Good Morning Football. Jason, how we doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Appreciate it. I saw somebody tweet like the Northeast shows you how close we are. The fact that this earthquake was felt in so many different states at the same time where everybody's tweeting about. So yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's been a totally normal week in New York. You know, we wind every day. Like, feel like my house is going to fall over. It's a good time. Obviously, lots occurred in the NFL. I want to quickly. We're going to talk some Jets. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit of kind of the AFC East. One thing that happened that because of kind of the current situation of the show, you didn't get to really talk too much about. Stefon Diggs got moved. I guess yesterday, 2 days ago. Already reworked the deal, which there was no chance he was ever playing on a 1-year, $18 million deal. What are your thoughts on just that overall? And then we'll talk some Jets, but obviously it affects the Jets a little bit. He's probably the best receiver in the division. Is now in the AFC South.
Yeah, kind of crazy. Just the buildup too. Obviously, last offseason, I think it was mini camp where it was Diggs was in the building and he wasn't in the building, and everybody was making a big to do about him and Josh Allen's relationship. And it was like, no, none of that's going on. And then obviously his production towards the end of last season, not only did it drop target wise, it didn't look like he was as involved in the offense. So you fast forward to I remember everybody, the other day they were talking about somebody tweeted like, did Josh Allen need a Stefon Diggs to be great? And he was like, you sure? And then next thing you know, the next day he goes to Houston. So I look at it for Buffalo. As you look at their wide receiver room right now, there's question marks. You picked up Curtis Samuel. You still have Shakir there, Khalil Shakir, who's had a really strong end of the season. And they picked up Mac Hollins. So you're looking at it like, all right, well, Diggs is gone. Who's going to be the guy to step up? I would assume they get somebody in the draft. But from a Josh Allen standpoint, he's a guy that you look at what Mahomes has been able to do when he lost Tyreek Hill. Is Josh Allen going to be able to weather that type of storm and be able to use those guys? Now, having Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, that lessens the blow a ton and maybe even opens their offense to get more 12 personnel and do some other things. But people will say, like, all right, Stefon Diggs' production went down. But what sometimes you fail to realize is, do other teams feel as though Stefon Diggs' level of play has gone down? Because if I go into a game and I don't want to leave my corner one-on-one with Stefon Diggs, that just opened up something else for the offense. So whether he's getting the ball every single play and putting up huge numbers, he impacts the way a defense treats the offense, which also opens up for other people. For Houston, I mean, this is huge. The GM there, Nick Caserio, I mean, they're going all in. You hit on your quarterback. You move up to get Will Anderson. You guys end up making the playoffs. You blow out the Cleveland Browns, and obviously you fall short to Baltimore. And now you double down Daniil Hunter and you get Joe Mixon in the trade. Now you add a guy like Stefon Diggs. And to your point, you rework the contract where now it's a 1-year deal. He's getting paid probably what he feels he's worth. But also, like, now I got to go prove to doubters that I'm still him. I'm still that guy. So you're going to get the best Stefon Diggs with a CJ Stroud. The AFC South just got a lot more interesting. I think Tennessee Titans got better, adding Calvin Ridley. But Houston, I mean, they're obviously the clear-cut favorite in that division, and they're going to make noise in the AFC. How much does yet to be determined?
Yeah, look, I think of the two games, I think the Jets open with, like, they're both. I think they'll open at home because they're going to want the ratings, but it might be the Bills. The Jets play the Texans again this year, and CJ Stroud's one game last year where I thought he looked horrible was the Jets made him look like really, really bad. And there's some really cool teach tape from a DB perspective on some of the things the Jets are doing. Nico Collins got hurt, and it was like, as much as I love Robert Woods, post ACL Robert Woods against Sauce is not really a fun matchup for the Texans. And that could be one of those games where Diggs and Sauce and the whole thing. I agree with you. I don't know how much worse it makes the Bills, but it certainly doesn't help them. And they're not exactly in a spot where, look, we've seen receivers go in the 20s and be very good year one. We've seen it a bunch. But I don't know, I've seen a lot of Bills, we'll trade up and get Rome Odunze. Like, buddy, getting from 28 to 7 or 6 is you're going to need to give 2 or 3 first-round picks like you're trading up for a quarterback. And does that one rookie receiver take you to a Super Bowl? I'm not so sure. So I think it's more likely they maybe trade up to the teens for Brian Thomas or something like that. That's maybe more of a realistic possibility. As you mentioned with Houston, all due respect to Adam Rank, I hope it was a troll tweet. He's like, NFL teams should copy the Texans and get a rookie quarterback and go all in. Like, yeah, that's usually
If the rookie quarterback hits, like
yeah,
you look
that'd
like
be
a
cool. The
genius.
Jets have
But
tried that 9 times since I've been alive, and I'm not even
yeah,
30 yet. So, yeah, sure. But I guess in terms of how it affects the Jets, obviously, look, I think Buffalo is a team they match up well with, and Miami is obviously they had a lot of injuries last year. They kept their quarterback healthy though, so. I guess, what do you think of their offseason as a whole so far? They've made a lot of 1 or 2 year commitments to guys. I think the only guys that have gotten 2-year deals are John Simpson, got a minor 2-year deal, and then the kicker and the punter. So everybody else, Morstead, he said he wants to play 7 more years, which I hope he does. Awesome dude. But what do you make of their offseason as a whole? They've added some big names. They've added some guys who, they've got a lot of former All-Pros on that team. It's a matter of staying healthy, I guess, and how much those guys have left.
No doubt. And when you say it's a matter of staying healthy, it starts at the quarterback position. You bring in Aaron Rodgers. We went through the whole Hard Knocks and all of that. And in 4 plays, the look on everybody's face in that stadium, season was over at that point. So when you talk about the offseason, the fact that Morgan Moses, Simpson, Tyron Smith, the fact that you went and shored up the offensive line, the entire Hard Knocks season, it felt like you were continuing to talk about Mekhi Becton and can Dwayne Brown stay healthy? And you're talking about the offensive line. Well, the one thing that we may say may be the Achilles heels of the Jets is so this offseason they say, you know what, we're going to invest out and we're going to go get offensive linemen that we feel like are going to help get us there, help keep Aaron Rodgers healthy. Now, obviously, getting Mike Williams on the outside, he's still coming off an ACL, but getting somebody to pair with a Garrett Wilson is huge. But I think the offensive line is the biggest thing because without it, we need to see the best version of Aaron Rodgers. And now he's 40 and he's coming off an Achilles. And as great as Rodgers is, and as much as Robert Saleh and everybody wants to say, like, I would never doubt Aaron Rodgers, he's still 40 coming off an Achilles. So you want to do everything you can around him to make sure he can perform at the highest level. I think one of the biggest things that probably a lot of people aren't talking about as much is Breece Hall now will be healthy from the very beginning of the season. Last year, as you're watching it, they went out and got Dalvin Cook, and it was like, all right, we got Cook, we got Breece. It didn't work. But Breece Hall was on a pitch count early in the season, and you saw the glimpses. And now, from get-go, he's going to be there, and you got a better offensive line. So there was games where you're just like, you have no idea how Breece is able to come up with 95 yards or doing some of these things. They can open up more holes and get him going. I think that's a huge deal for them. So having him healthy from week 1 is going to be a big deal.
Yeah, like if you told me, this is probably slightly embellished, but if you told me next year Breece Hall is a top 5 finisher for Offensive Player of the Year, like I wouldn't be shocked. He had 1,500 total yards last year, behind the worst offensive line and the worst quarterback in the league. Like that, you know what I mean? Like it should only get better. And he's a guy who early in the year, like as good as he was week 1 right away, I think he was like 5 carries for 120 yards, whatever. He probably scores on 2 or 3 of those if he's even 10% healthier. And I don't know, I've come off major surgery before. That first time actually having to sprint 90 yards it's horrible. It's horrible. Your legs get so tired. I feel like bricks. So, no, I think you make a good point there. This defense is something that's super interesting because, number 1 in EPA per play the last 2 years. And they lose Huff, and there was just a lot of frustration, I think, of, hey, he's a 25-year-old homegrown dude, first guy with 10-plus sacks as an edge rusher in 15 years for the Jets, and like really well loved, this underdog story, everything undersized, all that. I guess he's undersized, and then they let him walk to Philly, and for like a pretty reasonable number, humbly said he was going to get 3 for 51 in October. He got 3 for 51, and you're like, damn, like they go sign Javon Kinlaw. Sure, like exciting former first-round guy, was underwhelmed a bunch in another talented group, and they're good, and they're still going to be good, but like the Hassan Reddick's trade kind of came out of nowhere, and in a vacuum, like getting Reddick over Clowney probably is a much more advantageous move for them. What do you make of Hassan Reddick, the player? Because I feel like he's one of those guys, Jersey dude. I think he's a Temple guy as well. And like we don't talk about him a lot, but like low-key was a top 4 finisher and defensive player of the year 24 months ago and had 16 sacks, 5 forced fumbles. Like, that's really goddamn impressive. I don't know why we don't talk about him as much, but other than Myles Garrett, he's the only guy with 10-plus sacks in 4 straight years in the league. So pretty good player for a third-round pick in 2026.
Exactly, and what you just said, double-digit sacks in 4 straight seasons. So you're talking about somebody that when you put on the edge, and now you're putting him next to Quentin Williams and the other side of John Johnson. So like now you're adding him to an already deep defensive line. And to your point, I felt like a year ago we were talking about him because that Philly team was setting an NFL record for sacks, and they're knocking quarterbacks out of title games. So we're talking about Hassan Reddick, the player, and I still think, to your point, as great as it is to have a Hassan Reddick, as a fan, as a member of the organization, no different than Saquon Barkley a little bit down the street, where it's just like when you draft a guy or you bring a guy in, this is the first place he's in, and he hits and he develops. Especially Saquon, totally different because he was a high round pick. As soon as you brought him in, a guy like Bryce Huff, you bring him in and it's 3 sacks and it's 5 sacks. And then next thing you know, like you're seeing the progression year by year. Like that's the guy you try to almost pay in year 3 with the anticipation that by the time year 4 comes, we already see what's going to happen because we've watched it and we've developed it. So as a fan, you're like, those are the guys we want to keep here, especially the ones that good locker room guys set an example, because when the next guy comes in, that's who we point to. We're like, no, like go talk to Bryce Huff. Like when he first got here, he didn't see the field, and then he did these things. But at the same time, that's just the way this business works. As a general manager, as personnel people, you have to look at a player and say, we feel like he is at this level. When the numbers surpass that, then you're like, all right, like we love him, we wish him the best, and give them credit for going out and making the Hassan Reddick trade, because we've heard for a long time, all right, Hassan Reddick's on the trading block, Philly's trying to get rid of him. And as soon as they signed Bryce Huff, it was like, all right, well, he's probably going to be the first one out the door. So now you're getting a guy, not only with his production on the field, but now you're getting a guy who played in the Super Bowl a year ago. So now he knows what it looks like from a team standpoint. And he's a veteran where he's been around the league. He's been on multiple teams. So you're adding somebody, a veteran, to the locker room that's been through things and has gotten to the level that we want to get to be able to give off that advice and be in the locker room.
Yeah, and plus he's a Jersey guy, so Jersey football extremely underrated. Low key, like a lot of dogs.
No doubt about it.
No, not present company included. But no, like Reddick's the guy you mentioned knocking quarterbacks at the title game. He knocked Brock Purdy out of the title game, a year and a half ago, and I just think that he's one of those guys that also always durable. And again, I'm sure knock on wood, but like the Jets, a lot of the offseason moves. The two things I think we've talked about the Jets a lot is like they've done a really good job of getting assets for guys that were, Sam Darnold and Jamal Adams, and we keep praising Joe Douglas on that 2022 draft, and we should. The other thing they've done a lot this offseason, make good moves, but a lot of those guys have injury questions, right?
Yep.
Tyron Smith,
Yep.
Mike Williams in a vacuum, like his roster's sick, but Hassan Reddick is like proven player that's still in his 20s, and oh, by the way, has missed one game due to having COVID his entire career. Like that actually matters. And, we talked a lot about when you were on the show last year, how good could this defensive back, room be for the Jets? I still think they're probably a body light at safety. I still think they probably could add. Look, I don't know if they'll be able to do it, but Quandre Diggs or Justin Simmons in this defense and saying like, F it, like we're in a title window, we might as well go really be in one would be special. But even that corner room, Michael Carter's probably a top 5 nickel, if not better. He's the guy who, as you mentioned, he should be extended this year because his price is only going to go up. He's another guy who day 3 pick has worked his way up, played as a rookie, and it was like whatever. And then obviously DJ Reed, another guy.
And we just saw Teron Johnson.
I was just going to say, we've seen these guys getting paid like
slot DBs just hit. They're resetting the market again.
Yeah, you want to be ahead of it, not behind it. And then obviously Sauce. I think the discourse around Sauce is really weird for me, and I wanted to ask your kind of opinion on this. Is like, do you think it's like, I don't know, is it jealousy from other people? What is it? Because he kind of seems like he's generally speaking doing the right stuff all the time. His play is awesome to watch. He's like a humble dude who came in. He's been a first-team All-Pro both years, but he gets so much hate from around the league, and I don't really understand why. I know he likes to talk shit, and like that's fine, but every DB talks shit. I don't really understand why that's a problem. I guess kind of, can you talk about this cornerback room, but specifically what discourse around Sauce is just weird, and I don't really know what to make of it because every interaction I've had with him in person, like literally the nicest dude possible.
Yeah. Well, so I saw like the Asante Samuel stuff with him. And I felt like, but that's Asante. I feel like
Yeah,
he
it's like the classic, like the '90s basketball guys versus the 2010 guy. Like that's what it felt like a little bit.
and Asante, the way he looks at the game, Asante was unbelievable at taking the ball away. And there is a form of defense where that's not, you can't replace that. Like a guy that you can line up there and somehow or another he comes up with 2 interceptions, forced fumble, whatever it is. Asante Samuel was a ball magnet. So when he looks at the importance of the DB position, the cornerback position, I mean, he's gone at Revis. Like I don't know that I've seen a cornerback play better football than Darrelle Revis. I would rival that with the 2019 Stefon Gilmore, which I got a chance to see up close, which was unbelievable. Like, you go get him, their best player who they want to throw the ball to 15 to 20 times a game, and, like, we'll see you after the
I'm
game.
not saying that you guys didn't team win that Super Bowl, but like Stephon Gilmore was like, this dude's the best player on the field, and that's sharing the field with Aaron Donald, who might be the best defensive player ever. Like he was that good.
When you design your defense around a cornerback, like that says something. When we're playing the Green Bay Packers in 18, and it's just all right, you got Devontae Adams, and like we're all just gonna go play defense. You just got Devontae, and then oh yeah, when we want to double team Devontae, you go get somebody else because we don't need to take you up on double teaming the guy. Like and that's like Gilmore wanted that. Like he would look at me, I'll be on the other side, and we call the defense in the huddle, and it'd be like one double 17, and he'd be like, Jay, you go to the double. I'm going away. Like that was his demeanor. And I look at Sauce, and although he doesn't always match up, he's a guy that when you come in the league as a rookie, as a cornerback, that shit is tough. Like you can be as good as you want. You get in there and you're now going against a guy where you're probably playing against the best quarterbacks you've ever played against. So I used to tell people all the time, like receivers are good at every single level. Like they're fast, they get in and out of cuts, all of those things. When there's a dog at quarterback, when you're going against Ben Roethlisberger and he's throwing the ball to AB 20 times a game and 10 of those times is going to be an 8-second play, it's hard to cover him. So for Sauce to come in as a rookie and go all pro, and you can talk about interceptions all you want. And yes, that's something that you're going to want to see him improve on because he is one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. Like we need those takeaways. Like when the ball hits your hands, we got to have them. But at the same time, if I can match you up on a wide receiver who is a huge part of the offense and like he's shut down, you can't replace that. Like now we can roll coverage over another guy. We can commit to the run. There's so many different things as a coordinator that we can do. So not only Sauce, but when you look at their room, I don't think DJ Reed played as well as he played a year ago. But when you look at their room and there's Michael Carter, and when you can just play man to man and feel great about your matchups on the outside, that changes things. A third down, especially you get to when it's winning time in a 2-minute drill and you feel like your guys out there can handle it and you can go man to man and send pressure at a quarterback. I said it before the season, they have one of the best cornerback rooms in the NFL with those three guys that they line up. And it's different because they play man. Like, yeah, they play zone, but they go up there and they press and they get in your face and they cover you up. And I feel like to win at a high level in this league, you got to have guys that can play man to man.
Yeah, there was a couple of times last year people got pissed. Sauce wasn't traveling and stuff like that. Like against Keenan Allen on Monday night, like that game was one of the weirder games I think all year. Like Justin Herbert had 90 yards and got sacked a million times, and they still won by 20. Like made no sense. But shout out Zach Wilson, baby. But regardless, like I just feel like Sauce was traveling on third downs, and when you have such a good room, sometimes it's like you just trust your guys. It's just like we're gonna play what we're gonna play, and like you're not gonna beat us. They've given up one 300-yard pass in the last 40 games. Like we're in the NFL where 300 people, Zach Wilson, Mike White, like Trevor Siemian are throwing for 250, 300 yards, and like this isn't the early 2000s, late 90s where Kurt Warner putting up 280 yards a game was like this is a change in the NFL. Like this is. I don't know. We've seen some 5,000-yard passers in the last couple of years that aren't exactly going to stroll into Canton. So I wanted to ask you a little bit before we kind of just move to like some of the bigger picture looking forward stuff. Hassan Reddick, there was a report out of Philly, I guess yesterday, 2 days ago. Hey, they thought he was chasing sacks. I wanted the only other guy I've seen do that. He's amazing. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. JJ Watt did that a little bit at the end in Houston, and it was really obvious. And like, I think everyone around the league kind of knew it, and I'm sure JJ Watt would admit he was doing it. Maybe if he got him a couple beers in. I didn't see that on tape last year. I don't really know where that came from. And like, can you just explain what that means to people who might not understand what that means? And B, It looked like Fangio, whoever kind of mentioned Bryce Huff as like a 3-4 outside linebacker type stand up where Reddick wanted to put his hand in the dirt. If that's the case, like the Jets don't have, they play that wide 9. Like the guy's not dropping into coverage. Like
Yeah, yeah.
you are bending the edge. So Reddick's a perfect fit there. But you can kind of just mention what chasing sacks means or guys that chase interceptions. I think we hear more of that, Trayvon Diggs and these other guys where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you might want to jump around. Deron Bland did that a lot last year. It works out
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. In other games, in the
Mm-hmm.
Seattle game, you get cooked. Can you just kind of explain, I guess, what that means for like more in like layman's terms?
Yeah, the interceptions is funny. I had a veteran when I first came in the league, Nick Harper, and he used to talk about Asante that way. He said, as a cornerback, Asante knew you might double move him and score a touchdown, but he's going to get a pick six and he's going to get a second interception because he understood route concepts. The whole chase and sacks thing, philosophy wise, is interesting to me because when I first came in the league in Tennessee, we had a D line coach by the name of Jim Washburn, who was a terrific D line coach in the NFL for a very long time. One of his sayings used to say, "We'll tackle the run on the way to the quarterback." We played with wide 9s, and he wanted all his guys to be disruptive. And it was all about getting the hell up the field and go for sacks. Go get the quarterback. If the quarterback hands the ball off, hopefully we can get an arm on the running back and bring him down. There was a lot of discourse around that of people saying, like, all right, we got guys, especially sometimes we get where there would be no wide receiver and you just have a tight end set on the nub side. And I'm the cornerback there and I have the gap between the tight end and the tackle. My end runs up the field and the running back cuts up. Now I'm one-on-one with Maurice Jones-Drew in the hole. He's knocking my helmet off. So, like, as a DB, there's times where you want your guys to say, hey, like, don't rush up the field. But I think sometimes from the viewpoint of now, like, crossing into the media, becoming a fan, we watch and we say, oh, he's chasing sacks. You have no idea what he's taught on that play. It could be we're bringing pressure and he has the boot on the play, so he's getting up the field to contain the quarterback. So I think when you start to say things like that, like we're just guessing because everything is just falling to shit in Philly. So now we got to find different people to blame and we're poking holes at what this guy's not doing. And then also the fact that stuff is falling apart in Philly last year. Maybe you do have, whether it's Hassan Reddick, whether it's Josh Sweat, maybe you do have guys saying like, yo, I got to make a play. Because we were just 10-1, and next thing you know, we're just losing game after game. So we have to figure those things out. But I think the chasing sacks thing, unless you're coaching a player and you know exactly what he's being taught, you can't determine whether he's chasing a sack or not. Because even from the J.J. Watt standpoint, I remember we had a guy, Jarrell Casey, when I was in Tennessee. We literally would put defenses in where he was allowed to do whatever he wanted. And the linebacker knew it might be whatever the call was, 99. And he didn't have to control his gap. He could, if he saw something or sensed something, he could get up the field. You will put calls in that because you have guys that are special at certain positions that you want to give them the freedom so they don't do it on a play where you need them to be in a certain gap and they jump out. But I look at it, to your point, of more of a fit standpoint. Hassan Reddick, a guy that's been in the league for a while, that's had success. And if I've had success putting my hand in the dirt, hell, you talking about coming here and I'm going to be a 3-4 outside. Like, because then I'm going to go out there and I'm going to have 6 sacks. I'm not going to be as productive. I'm going to get beat in coverage. And then a year from now, you're going to say, hey, we're going to need you to take a pay cut because when we turn the film on, you didn't play as well as you did from the years prior. And he's like, of course I have. I'm not, because I'm playing out of position. So, no, like, send me to a place where I feel like I can thrive in that. Well, you're talking about a Bryce Huff who's 25 and you've only known one system. So now you're like, well, hell, I'll try it. Let me see how I can do it. That may unlock something different for me, where Hassan Reddick might be like, nah, I've gone through that. So I think from a scheme fit standpoint, that's the most important thing. Get a guy in the right scheme and let him use the God-given ability that he's been blessed with, and that's where you get the production.
Yeah, look, if you look at Hassan Reddick's first 3 years, the Cardinals wanted him to be a weak side linebacker, and he had 7.5 sacks. Ever since then, he's had double-digit sacks every year. I wouldn't want to go back to being a weak side linebacker. As you mentioned, too, like, there's a money component to a lot of this stuff. I think sometimes we forget about that stuff. I'm sure it'll be this conversation with, Kyle Pitts down the line and some of these tight ends. So they play receiver, they tight end. We've seen with Travis Kelce. We see with edge rushers, they a linebacker, they an edge rusher, D-tack. These John Franklin Myers said it a million times on this podcast over the summer. He's like, I'm an edge rusher. I'm not a defensive tackle. I'm not a defensive end. I'm an edge rusher, because he knows I'm going to get paid differently. The franchise tag's different, all that different type of stuff. I want to ask you one more Jets question and just kind of look forward to, kind of a couple of things coming up here. The Jets have the 10th overall pick. I am a huge I understand there's some risk with the offensive line. I'd like to see them trade up for one of these big three receivers and say, like, no matter what happens next year, we're going to run out Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, and Rome, Neighbors, or Marv with Breece Hall and Tyler Conklin and be like, we're going to go full, like, fuck you mode. This skill group's awesome, and you have to account for it. And even if we're down one tackle or one guard, we can kind of have Rodgers just get the ball out quick, get him into playmakers' hands. There's also obviously the argument for Brock Bowers, who's kind of a hybrid a little bit. And then you look at, maybe some of these offensive linemen who fall. I just feel like when you're in a win now mode, like you kind of also, I just want to see the Jets operate of like, we want to go score points because our defense is awesome. Our special teams is really good. We've got this quarterback who complains constantly. He doesn't have weapons. Like, you want weapons? Here's all the weapons. The Packers haven't drafted a receiver in the first round in 20 plus years. Like, see, year 2 here, you already get a receiver. Where do you kind of land on what they should do in the draft? Are you like a trade up, get the aggressive guy, or are you more just stay 10, take the best player available?
I would probably be the fact that you got to be aggressive as possible in the sense of you traded to go get Aaron. It was weird last year when you draft Will McDonald. And I know they said they were linemen they wanted that fell off the board. So then you go best player available and you get a Will McDonald who doesn't play a ton for you in year 1, which was understandable because he joined a deep defensive line group. But like to me, as I look at this year, and that was the draft pick they made last year in the first round, it's just like I got to imagine they're going to do best available again this year because you just did that last year when you traded for Rodgers and you brought him in and it was Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb and those guys, which no disrespect to them, but you're looking at it as, yeah, they're Rodgers guys, but are they the best thing that you can put out there on the field? At the end of the season, Xavier Gipson was getting more reps in there as well. So I would assume they stay at 10 and to your point, maybe you do try to trade up and get a Neighbors, but this is such a deep wide receiver draft that you can get somebody you want at 10. The Brock Bowers thing is very interesting to me. When Mike Williams is going to be available is kind of the tough thing about it because if you feel really good about Mike Williams and Garrett Wilson on the outside, then you're like, hey, we're set. We can move around different guys in the slot. Mike Williams may not be ready to go week 1, and then it may take him time.
I was going to say, the way they've voiced a lot of it is a lot of like, he should be ready week 1, but like, don't expect him to be in the start of training camp. And it's like, so you're kind of tempering the expectations that he might very much not be ready. Breece Hall last year, I think it'll be a similar thing. Like those second joint practices, you start to get into 7-on-7, some like non-contact team periods. Week 1, I doubt we see like prime Mike Williams.
Yeah. So if you can get a guy on the outside, and now you're saying like, all right, we can groom him alongside. Now him and Garrett Wilson are our future, and we'll make a decision on who we pay at some point. But like you have 2 dogs on the outside for Rodgers to feel comfortable with. It's like, all right, go for it. I'm interested with a Rodgers. I don't know how he feels. I remember being with Brady as Brady got older. He wasn't in love with rookie wide receivers. His whole thing was give me a veteran that knows exactly how to run routes and I can get them open. Like we can figure that thing out. But the tough thing is trying to get a rookie on the page right now when we're trying to win a Super Bowl this season where he may take a year to develop or really understand the position. So like that factors into, I think Brock Bowers would be fascinating because now you got weapons on the outside. Now you can attack down the middle of the field with a guy at the tight end position that can kind of do everything. It felt like he was at Georgia forever where we've been talking about him coming out in the NFL for a long time. That to me would be more interesting. Offensive line,
it's similar with receiver. Like offensive linemen usually suck in year 1, especially tackles. And then they get Andrew Thomas, the perfect example.
Yeah.
Out of Georgia, like, 4th overall. He was awful as a rookie. And then year 2 was like, oh, this guy's actually really good. Like we should have probably given him time. I just don't know if I get it, but I don't know if the Jets are really in a spot to like the left tackle wasn't walking in day 1 and being a top 5 left tackle.
You got to go win the Super Bowl right now. So like as they look at their offense with Hackett and everybody, receiver away, go get our damn receiver. If we feel comfortable that receiver at 10 is going to be ready to go when we go on our pro days and all of that, if we can trade up and go get a guy that we feel like he is going to be a missing piece to winning a Super Bowl, because you can't, like, Rodgers got hurt 4 plays in. Like, you got to assume if I'm the Jets, we got this 1 year with Rodgers and we're going all in. We have no idea if he's going to want to play football next year, so we got to go all in right now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Rodgers is as much as he says he's not obsessed with what Brady does, all of a sudden he's randomly wants to play 4 more years on podcast the other week. He's taking pay cuts. He's doing political stuff. It's like, oh, interesting. You maybe want to be exactly like Tom. Which, hey, I would take a Super Bowl. What's my thing is I think the Jets need to be the AFC East is the goal. Anything else after that, it means hosting a home playoff game, which they haven't done since both of us were in elementary school or in middle school. Like, I think that's the expectation, and anything above that, meaning like you're probably in the divisional round of the playoffs, you're at least like, hey, now we're a legit contender. Obviously, you'd love to go further. Is that a fair? Everyone's going to say the Super Bowl is the expectation of the goal. I just they haven't made the playoffs since 2010. It's hard for me to like jump that far. And again, I guess it depends on they go trade up for Marvin Harrison. Like we're going to have a different conversation, but I just think getting to the divisional round at least, meaning probably winning a playoff game and hosting a playoff game, I think is a really nice place to start. And anything after that is gravy. Is that too soft? Like, am I tempering it too much here?
I feel like if you're a Jets fan, you got to think that way. I look at it as the Super Bowl. You go get Rodgers. Now you're shoring up the offensive line because you watch your guy get hurt. You make these moves to go win the damn thing. Yes, it would be awesome to your point. And I'm not saying I don't think it's a failure if they don't win the Super Bowl. But I would say I'm looking at the Jets and the expectation is to get to that Super Bowl game. It's not to just host a playoff game, be in the divisional round. And I get it. Like what I'm asking probably is like, oh, that's probably too much. Like we haven't done that in forever. But when you make the moves that you've made and you go out and get your quarterback, when Tampa Bay brought Brady over and they had Jameis, and Jameis threw for 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions, they were doing it with the thought process of we have a really good defense. They were stopping the hell out of the run with Levante David and all of those guys up front. We just need the quarterback position. I look at the Jets, what they've done, they haven't had the number 1 draft pick because their defense has been that good that they've actually been relevant for the bulk of these seasons the past few years. You got to feel like if I'm them, we plugged the right quarterback. And it's not like, yo, we got a quarterback. Like, no, we have one of the best quarterbacks of his generation. You can argue the most talented guy while he was playing. So, like, we just got to get him right. And, like, yeah, the goal is to win a Super Bowl, surround him with what he needs, which you would feel like if I'm the Jets, Green Bay wasn't doing. So now we'll do that for him, and we got to feel like we can get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's funny that the Packers invested all this money and picks in their defense, and I still feel like every year the defense was pretty shitty. That's the Jair Alexander was like, oh, okay, another 25-year-old middle linebacker out of the SEC. This is going to go well. You obviously mentioned Brady there, and I told you I'd ask you one question about the Dynasty, and I thought there's actually 2 episodes of very Jet-centric. There's obviously been a lot of Patriots-Jet stuff over the last 20-25 years with Bill and just Spygate and a lot of these different things that happen. And I as a kid very much thought that 2008 the 2008 loss to the Jets and Matt Castle's first start was, the Jets losing to the Patriots is their home opener. Like that Jets team was really good, and like they went to back-to-back title games after that. Did you enjoy watching it back? And was there something that I guess stood out to you just from watching it back? Because I think the man in the arena was really cool, but it was very much Brady focused, and it was like all highs. Like there was not really they didn't even show the Jets lost in 2010, whereas this was a little bit different and kind of covered. It was a big time climb, and then Bill got shit on a little bit towards the end there.
No doubt about it. I was in the stands for the 2010 playoff loss. I froze my butt off, and that was my brother's rookie year. And I remember them beating the Jets in Jersey, and my brother getting an interception on the right sideline and running through the end zone doing the jet. And I remember laughing at him after that playoff game of like, all right, now y'all just got y'all butts whipped at home. But I enjoyed the Dynasty. Now, I have a different approach in the sense of, yes, I was there, but I was only there for 3 years. So I was like a group project, and I just came in, wrote my name at the end, and was able to get an A on the test. So I looked at the very beginning of the Dynasty, and that was probably the most intriguing part for me because I don't really have recollection. I remember talking to Scott Pioli because he talked about being in Cleveland, getting run out of town and moving on from quarterbacks, and they had a noose around him and Belichick. Like the Browns fans were crazy and hated Bill, and he gets ran out of town. And then you're in New England and you have Drew Bledsoe that you just committed $100 million to, and you're just like, no, we feel really good about this Tom Brady guy. And like that whole behind the scenes of all of that was fascinating to me, of just seeing how it all developed and how it all came out. I remember talking to my brother about towards the end of it of all of the Bill stuff, and I saw Slater went on Edelman's podcast, and those two guys talked about it. And the thing was, I don't think those guys were mad that they had some negative things to say, because I was on an 0-16 Cleveland Browns team and then won the Super Bowl the very next year with the New England Patriots. There was plenty of stuff to complain about with both organizations. Like, that's just the way it goes. No matter what team you play for, there's going to be some negatives. I think those guys were more pissed that it was only the negatives. It was just like, and as I'm watching it and I'm seeing it, I'm like, well, I know how those guys feel about Bill. So I know it's not all negative. I know the amount of love and respect they have for him, of the fact that my brother walked away from the NFL, and you're like, oh yeah, I played in New England for 13 years and I went to 5 Super Bowls and won 3 of them. Like, there's not many players that have played in the National Football League, no matter how long you've played, that can say that. And a lot of that is due to the coach that they had. And obviously they had to play well. So it was very entertaining and I enjoyed it, but I understood what those guys were saying from that vantage point. It was cool talking to Pioli as well, as he was like, as he was watching it, like you relive it and you put yourself back in the moments of the highs and the lows of all of that. When you talk about Mangini leaving and what those feelings had to feel like for those guys. But probably my favorite part was the Super Bowl against the Falcons, when they showed Pioli.
I was just gonna bring that up.
It was like, that's Freddy Krueger on the other side, and it's just like to be up. I wanted to turn the game off at halftime, because obviously I'm watching with a vested interest because of my brother. But for him to be there and to have those thoughts in the midst of that game, and then Muhammad Sanu, my fellow Scarlet Knights, being mic'd up, talking trash throughout the game, and then the way it all happened, that behind the scenes was really good.
Yeah, I thought that Super Bowl when Robert Alford had that pick six and Brady looked like old and a little bit, and he's getting beat up, and Grady
that terrible
Jarrett,
dive,
terrible dive. Grady Jarrett's beating his ass, and it was just like, as a grown up, obviously as a Jets fan, it's like this is so cool, and like Matt Ryan was like, he's like, Northeast guy, like Northeast quarterback, which is like so rare, and like wins an MVP, although Rodgers should have won the MVP that year too, but. I just, that one, and like the Rams one as a kid, it was like my first Super Bowl I remember. So like I literally, my favorite non-Jets teams growing up was the Rams, because it was like Marshall Faulk, I think, had the best 3-year run of running backs ever had. Like, win the offensive player 3 years in a row, and like nobody talks about it. And he actually just did a podcast the other day. Said they asked him when he knew he was going to the NFL. He said his second game in college, he had 370 yards and 7 touchdowns. I was like, bro, what?
370 yards
in 2 quarters. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you walk on campus and do that. Bruce and Hull and Kurt Warner, and it's just like that game shaped so much of how the NFL, because everyone wanted to be the Rams, and it was like, oh wait, Brady's now here for good. Like, I think we forget Belichick giving Bledsoe like $100 million deal in 1998 or 99, whatever that was. Like, it's a lot of money back then. The salary cap was like $100 million. It's not like it is now, where like we see $250 million over 5 years. Like, this is like, you got big time money, and like, I know Drew had a big arm. Like, I think he was good, but like, I guess it's so interesting going back and watching some of that stuff.
Ernie Adams saying like Drew was scared. Like, we knew we couldn't put him back in. He had gotten beaten up, and it was a no-brainer for them to say like it was a no-brainer that we had to stick with Brady is insane.
Yeah, I know. I feel like it's like a little revisionist, but like, even the craziest part is I tweeted this and people didn't like it, but like Mo Lewis, that hit on Bledsoe is like one of the most impressive. Like, he was an amazing linebacker. I think he was an 8-time Pro Bowler. Like, he was a forever Jet, and he broke the Patriots starting quarterback in half. Like, and we just talk about it like, oh, fuck this guy. Like, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm sure Brady would have figured it out. I know there's always an origin story, but like, you don't become the greatest player ever, like, because someone else got hurt. I don't know. I have a hard time with blaming the Jets for that.
I know what you mean. Yeah. That, as good as Brady became, somewhere or another, like, that was coming to the surface. Like, to your point, that was just the way it did, but it was coming to the surface.
Yeah.
The fact that they stuck with him, like, you knew up until that point, like, they already believed in him from training camp on. Even hearing Kyle Shanahan say that when he got Brock Purdy in there as a rookie, he told Jed York in training camp,
like, trade Trey Lance. He's not ever going to
play. Our third quarterback might be the best quarterback on our roster. So, like, yeah, we see Brock Purdy and like the injuries forced him into the lineup. but like the coaches and the different people, they saw that already. Or you go out and get somebody else if you don't think that guy can play.
Yeah, I think people in the actual building, it's the day to day you see guys. I remember, I'm
Yep.
not going to bash Denzel Mims, but like you would see him in practice, and you're like, dude, I know he's a second round pick. Like this guy's never going to play in the NFL. He doesn't. Nothing was. He can't get open at all. It was like tough to watch. And then why isn't he playing? Why isn't he playing? And it's like day to day, like even in a game, he might get open once or twice, but day to day, like he
And
couldn't
you
get
can see
open
it.
at all. And you can see, and you're like, this guy is third team reps, and it's not. He just can't figure it out. I want to ask you one final question. Grew up in the area, obviously played up in New England. You played the Jets a lot. There's been a lot of talk this offseason, and I'm not going to put you in hot water here. It's a general question of there's always a lot of conversation on, there's a lot of the law Jets stuff and like, haha, like the Jets did this, or, and when they're good, but then when they're good, right? And you see everyone on ESPN, basically the entire set of Get Up and First Takes, all former Jets from those teams. I guess I don't know how to phrase this. What's your impression, I guess, now, like maybe now versus when you were playing and growing up, of like the Jets organization as a whole, just because it feels like it's always such a big talking point of there's a lot of jokes that can get off, but then Jets fans are so passionate about the team and they are a huge organization that hasn't had a lot of success. Like, I'm trying to ask you, like, what's like the impression, I guess, when you were playing them? Has it changed now that now in the media and stuff like that?
So while I was playing them for the most of my career, like they were just another team on our schedule, and not in a negative way,
Yeah,
but
it's just like it's not
playing for
playing
the
the Colts and like
yeah,
Peyton and Mahomes, these guys.
playing for the Tennessee Titans, like people probably would say the same exact thing about us. Like when we played the Titans, like we didn't think much of it. It was just, all right, that's another team on my schedule. Now I go to New England. Now I'm playing within the division. The Jets and the Bills were like, when you had to play those two teams, it was a totally different week. And no matter what the Jets were like, the whole history with Bill and the Jets, like that was a game that we were going to win, and we were going to go all out to prepare for and do all of those things. There was never a point in my 3 years in New England where it was just like, all right, like it's Jets week, like Jets stink, quarterback this, and like it was like, nah, like Jets week, division game, like we know they're going to come and try to punch us in the mouth. So I look at it now, like even the whole stuff with the Salah and the Woody Johnson, and then everybody was like, well, everybody always gets on the Jets. Now being in the national media is just like the way I look at it, as I talk about whatever team in the light in which they're showing us. So like for the last few years with the Jets, from the Sam Darnold to seeing ghosts to the way Zach Wilson has played, like when you become the butt of jokes, is because that's what's happening. I don't think, like for me, I'm not going out there and saying, you know what, like I play for the Tennessee Titans and that's my team. So like anything I can make a dig at the Houston Texans, I'm going to do it. Like, no, like I'm not getting paid by the Titans anymore. Like now I'm just trying to do a job. So I try to be objective and just look at teams. So I do think for the last several years, when you watch the Jets, like it has been that way, because when you see some of the things that are unfolding, hell, I did the Black Friday game and Tua didn't play great at all. And pick six, like it was an ugly display of football. And it was never a doubt really that the Dolphins were going to win, because every time the Jets got on offense, you were just like, what is this? Like, what product is this? The year before, Chris Streveler's in the game after you take, and you're so like, you can say like, all right, the media picks on us. I don't think it's that. I think the media is talking objectively about what the product is on the football field. There was no, think about, to your point, when they trade for Aaron Rodgers on Hard Knocks, on every show being on Good Morning Football, damn near every show we opened up talking about Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. And not in a negative way. Yeah, there were some people that were saying like, oh, I think this thing, or I hope this thing's going to crash and burn. But that's just people that are pessimists, and they talk about any team in that light. So I do look at it, and it's that fast. Like people talked about the Cleveland Browns in that fashion forever. Joe Flacco comes in there, goes on a run. Baker Mayfield a few years ago takes him to the playoffs, and then you start talking positive about a team. So that's all it really takes. And I don't look at it as anyone's picking on the Jets. It's just you're talking about the product that was being shown to you.
I will say, I don't know if I've ever seen a player be more passionate about playing the Jets and own the Jets more than your brother did.
See,
Yeah,
he's the guy that when he's in the media, if he has an opportunity to talk, but like 13 years of it, and I would assume when you hear Bart Scott talk about the New England Patriots, it's going to be the same. We've heard it, the same exact thing. Those type of rivalries, like you don't just lose it. So for those guys,
Bart said something recently about Bill that was like actually outrageous. I don't remember. It's something about like if there was a fire, he wouldn't
I
even
saw that.
he wouldn't piss on Bill to save him. No, like I vividly remember your brother basically being like, Zach's going to give us one or two, and then he had 3 picks, and like probably one of the worst games I've ever seen quarterback in my life. No, I just was curious because I think it's something that gets talked about so much. Of the Jets fan base gets very upset. Look, I get it. Like I think every fan base gets upset when the Patriots fan base is very upset right now.
Yep.
It's just.
It is what it is.
I was just saying, as someone that played against them, but also grew up in the area and like understand like the fan base and how New Yorkers and people in New Jersey are. Like, you're passionate about your teams. Like, I get it.
Brian Dable had a birthday party for his kids during the season on a Saturday, and there were reports that Dable was partying all Saturday night before a Sunday game, and it was a damn kid's birthday party. Like,
I was at Zach Bryan on Saturday. The Mets had played. Pete Alonso went 2 for 4, and he was like on stage because he's a famous person. That's what, every concert now they bring out somebody. He sings one song, goes 2-4 the next day. The Mets suck. So Pete was hammered. I'm like, dude, who cares?
hey,
if you pull back the hood,
Northeast,
buddy, I'll bet you more than one person. Not everybody in the NFL and the MLB is sober 7 days a week. Let me just phrase it to you that way.
Welcome to the tri-state area, man.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna have thick skin. You have no choice.
Welcome to seeing how the sausage is made. But no, I appreciate obviously you're taking some time, and obviously a lot to come over the next couple months, and I'll leave it at that. But appreciate obviously as always, and make sure you guys are following Jason and kind of some of the stuff he's gonna have going on. And I'll be back on the feed on Tuesday.
Yes, sir. Always good to see you, man.